Maruti Suzuki's People Technology presents Suzuki Connect with Navigate to Car and many other features.
Watch more, feel more. Dell.
Well, it's a massive double match day in Group 1 of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2021. Australia v England later this evening. The afternoon fixture kicks off with South Africa and Sri Lanka, where these two teams stand on the points table of Group 1 tells you why this game is significant. Add to the fact that South Africa have changed their fortunes. They beat the West Indies after going down to Australia. Sri Lanka, on the other hand, had a stellar tournament, beat Bangladesh in the Super 12s, and then just lost a little bit of momentum against the Aussies last time around. So it's all to play for in Sharjah, as these two teams will kick off in just under 20 minutes from now. This is Maruti Suzuki Presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell. We're coming to you a few minutes late. Mahela, Jayawardene and Ajit Agarkar probably just took a little extra time on the golf course this morning. Here they are now, as I say good afternoon to both of them. Ajit, you doing well?
Yeah, good, Rona. Good to see you. I've had a holiday last couple of days.
Yes, I've been missing a little bug that kept me away, but can't keep me away for too long. Mahela, come on, tell me what the WhatsApp chat was like after the last game. You had a real go at the boys, or have they removed you from the group already since you left?
And the group has been pretty quiet. I think it's probably a one game that the boys had a bad day out. I mean, and the Australians were quite good on the day. The skilled execution was very, very good. So I think a lot to learn. And the first time the Sri Lankan boys played on that Dubai surface as well. So it took them
Yes.
some time to adjust and showed a little bit of inexperience in that as well. But I think Sharjah is a different proposition. They've been playing a lot of matches lately in Sharjah, so they should be quite familiar with the conditions.
It's a tricky little fixture, this, Ajit. Is it fair to say there is one clear team that's a favourite from what we've seen? South Africa just 2 games, 1 win, 1 loss. Sri Lanka the same, at least in the Super 12s.
Yeah, it's the pitch as well, isn't it? I think it's the same pitch that they play on from yesterday, so that might be a little bit tricky. So Sri Lanka might have to quickly assess what a good score is now that they are defending. So yeah, the conditions might play a big part, but I don't think there is a clear favorite here. I think both teams have had one really good game. Sri Lanka probably chased down a big total, so they might feel a bit more confident. But coming off a loss is never good. The conditions might play a big part on how this game goes today.
Yes, Dasun Shanaka said at the toss, Mahela, that he feels like there's some sort of advantage that they've played in Sharjah already. They're going to play another one here in Sharjah. South Africa have moved from Abu Dhabi to Dubai to now their third venue in as many games in the tournament. Does that give Sri Lanka the slight edge?
I think the slight edge of conditions in the sense that they would know um, length that the bowlers needs to bowl, how the batsman needs to go about, like especially up front. But given the same scenarios, I mean, most of the South African players did play in the IPL, so they would have passed on those information to the rest of the group as well. Um, I think, like Ajit says, there's no clear favorite. I think both teams have their strengths and weaknesses. It's on the day how you play the conditions and handle those certain situations, whether with the bat or with the ball. I predict a close game, but it all depends who can keep their nerve. South Africans probably have the edge because they have the experience under their belt, where the Sri Lankans, just the conditions that they've played here a few more times and then, be a bit more familiar with.
Yeah, it's an afternoon game though, Mahela. Does that in some way also benefit Sri Lanka with dew not being a factor for their spinners? Even though South Africa won the toss, they're going to bowl first. Sri Lanka wouldn't mind an afternoon game?
I think Sri Lanka wouldn't mind, especially after losing the toss. The last time that when I was there as well, there was not much dew. I know there's quite a bit dew in Dubai, but strangely there's not much dew. But there's definitely the wicket tends to come on a bit better under lights in the second half. So afternoon game, it's going to be the same condition for both teams. So there's not going to be that much of an advantage whether you bat first or bat second. Like Ajit says, the because it's the same wicket that they used yesterday's game. We know it was a low scoring game, so Sri Lanka needs to assess what a good score would be rather than trying to get to a bigger score and end up maybe 10, 15 runs short.
Yeah, we're still trying to figure out what's a bit better when it comes to the Sharjah surface, which has made cricket a bit hard to watch in the last few months. Let's hope it's a good game, though. South Africa won the toss. They're going to bowl first. All the talk about what could possibly happen to Quinton de Kock seems to have been put to rest, Ajit. He's issued a statement. Back he comes into this team. Themba Bavuma said the door would always be open to him. And it looks like Heinrich Klaassen misses out and Reza Hendricks will drop to perhaps a number three position. Markram four, that's a bit flexible with Rassi van der Dussen having batted at 3-2. But De Kock comes straight back in for you, Ajit?
For sure. I mean, all the other issues having been sorted, like you said, he's made a statement as well, and the team's got to put it behind. There are things which you have to move on from, particularly when somebody is accepted, and we saw what the statement said. So he's such a key player for them. If he does get going, it makes their middle order even more formidable. So he's a terrific player. We all know that, and I'm sure they're happy to have him back.
Yeah, he was leading run scorer against Sri Lanka in the bilateral series these two teams played in September. Player of the tournament, player of the series in that. That having been said, Mahela, would they have been tempted to just go with the same team? They beat the West Indies in the last game. Reza Hendricks got runs at that. And Quinton de Kock hasn't had the best of IPLs as you saw from close quarters.
Yeah, I think it would have been a tough call, but I think they made the right one. Having that second left-hander as well in the lineup is quite important, especially given the conditions. If they're playing on that surface, I think there's a slightly shorter boundary on one end as well. So I mean, Quinton is a very experienced player. Yes, he's going through a bit of a tough period with the bat, but we all know, when he's doing well, he's always, going to give them that added advantage, and especially the experience behind the stumps, helping Pauma as well on the field as a senior pro. I think all those factors would have come into the selection. Him, brought him back. I think end of the day, it's the right decision.
All right. So South Africa with Quinton de Kock and out goes Heinrich Klaassen. Sri Lanka go unchanged. Now, Mahela, would you go with that in spite of the loss? They stick to the same group of players. Happy with that?
Yeah, definitely. I think this is a group that played really well in Sharjah. Most of them understand their roles in these conditions, and this is probably the best combination for Sri Lanka going forward. I mean, if there's any issues with form of the batsmen, I think most of the batsmen now have come into some sort of form, but they haven't been consistent as a group. But everyone has had a bat and has scored runs in different games from the qualifiers or from the warm-ups. So I think this is the very well balanced squad for Sri Lanka. So I think it was an easy decision for them unless they had any injuries.
All right, fair enough. Now let's talk about Sri Lanka's batting. They're going to have to do the job in the first innings this time. We've got Mahela here who spent some time with the team too. Ajit, you followed the group stages too. We saw a number of individually brilliant performances. We saw Hasaranga, we've seen Asalanka, Rajapaksha's got runs too. We've not seen the batting come together quite as yet. Avishka Fernando's numbers aren't great either. He's not had much of a contribution. Where does Sri Lanka's, say, troubles lie from what you've seen first? I'll come to Mahela too. But as a batting unit, are they convincing?
I think it's a little bit of experience that they lack, isn't it? I think ideally they would want a decent start, and doesn't even mean like a big start. I think Pereira looked good in the last game. Even in the last game, I think till Asalanka got out sweeping to Zampa, they looked on course to get to a total which they from a lot more than from what they got. So there are guys in form. It's about putting it all together at the moment, and sometimes maybe the inexperience shows, perhaps, and that's why I feel that today more than ever, because they're batting first on this surface, and I think afternoon game really suits them, even though they are defending and chasing teams have had the better on the Sharjah pitch. If they can get to a score which is par or just above, I think Sri Lanka suddenly will fancy their chances with their bowling. So that is the key, and for that, and I know there are aggressive players, and you don't want to really change the way people play, but maybe a little bit more circumspect at times, picking and choosing which bowler to attack once you have a look at the conditions might be the better way to go because there's a lot of talent in that batting lineup.
Yeah, I mean, it's there for us to see, Mahela, but it's a tricky one, isn't it? They started with experience. You guys started with experience. You went with Chandimal. He had to eventually make way, and Asalanka's been terrific. He looks the part. Suddenly, when things go wrong, you wonder, could they have done with a bit more experience? How do you just balance that out?
I think they have. I mean, given the squad composition, I think now they've to this group of players who've had a decent run, and the younger guys bring in that freshness into the group. They don't play with that much of fear of failure. They just go out and play cricket. I think you need that. So it's striking that balance is the important thing. I think everyone has got runs. I think even the numbers that you put Avishka Fernando, but leading up to the World Cup, the 4 games that they had, he scored 4 consecutive 50s. So he just missed out on few. So I think Sri Lanka just wanted everyone to like try and click in one game to see how they could be, rather than having one or two individuals coming in and putting runs on the board and then the bowlers coming in and doing the job. So the last game it was probably the bowlers who were a bit uh, stray in the sense that they're line and lengths and do too much. So it's all about all these components right in a game and executing. Uh, you might not call it a near perfect game, but somewhere close to that. And if you play to that potential with the skill set that Sri Lanka has, they will have a very very good advantage on this against South Africa.
Speaking of Avishka Fernando, there's a lot to like about him. Now, Pereira and Nisanka have occupied the opening slots. Funny enough, it's either one or the other that tends to click on a day, Mahela. Would you be happy with what you've got from the two openers in this tournament so far? Would you be tempted to make a tweak and put Avishka up top?
The thing is with Avishka, whenever he's batted at the top, he struggled quite a bit and doesn't complement with Kusal Pereira because they're both guys who want to hit those big shots. So I think Avishka batting at 4 gives Sri Lanka that little bit of power in the middle as well. Otherwise, they would lack that. So I think they are tempted because I think Pathum Nissanka and Kusal Pereira complements each other. Like you said, ideally you want both of them to have a good run, bat the 6 overs and get to a good start and then off. So Khalid Asalanka has been pretty good. So that's a plus for Lanka. Karnaka Rajapaksa is that job done in that middle of the order. So I think one thing is to try and get everyone to try and play a very good game together. I mean, it might not be big scores, but as they're consistent batting with that tempo, especially in Saja, you're not looking at 60s, 70s, 80s. It's about a good 40 or 50 get going, and then everyone else being able to contribute.
Yeah, I mean, perhaps there's so much that's happened in this tournament. We haven't spoken of one thing in this game which could be important. South Africa's bowling seems to be quite the threat. Ajit. We've been focusing a lot on the off-field issues and perhaps also the fact that their batting looked a bit scratchy in their opening game against Australia. We're just going to toss up the numbers now, not just the seamers. We know Nokia had an outstanding IPL. He's excellent in these conditions. Rabada seems to be given a bigger role this T20 World Cup. But Maharaj has been very good against Sri Lanka. For some reason, they can't figure out how to play left arm orthodox spin. I can't believe I'm saying the words, but they couldn't figure out Keshav Maharaj when he was up in Sri Lanka in September recently. It's a good record against them. There's also Tabrash Shamshi. They've got quite the all-round attack, Ajit. It's impressive. How do you pick them in terms of the others that you see in the tournament?
They are very good. I mean, you can and they've I always like the team that has a sixth option. I think Adam Markram when needed can do that job, even if it's a couple of overs. He opened the bowling in the last game. So no, I mean Rabada and any attack that has a Rabada and Nokia is going to be a handful. Doesn't matter what sort of pitch it is because they are
Yeah.
two world class bowlers. So as Shamsi provides a little bit of mystery, Kesha Maharaj is getting better with every game. And Pretorius, provides what they need perhaps at the end of the innings or different stages of the innings with variations. So well-rounded attack, and you always expect good attacks from South Africa. I think it
Hmm.
generally over the history has been their strengths and their strength. And Sharjah pitch, any bowler anyway is a lot more difficult than perhaps Dubai and Abu Dhabi. But some world-class bowlers like Rabada and Nokia make it even more difficult on that pitch. So Sri Lanka will have to bat really well, particularly at the start of the innings.
Yeah, they know their record against this team in recent times, whether that matters a bilateral record when it comes to a T20 World Cup, Mahela. But does today's matchup call for some creativity in the batting order? Would we see an Asalanka, Hasaranga up there to try and neutralize a Keshav Maharaj? What's the best way they can go about that?
I think they have to do something different. I know they've had few issues with spin. I think even with Sampa as well, the last game, they were not able to, control certain spinners. So I think the Bangladesh game was the game that they played spin well, but not against Shakib up front. So the two left-handers does make a huge difference for the Sri Lankan batting lineup, and three left-handers actually with Kusal Perera, Asalanka, and Bhankar Rajapaksa, especially trying to spread out and then make sure that the left-arm spinner does not dominate them, because you have Shamsi as well, who's going to bring that variety into the attack in that middle overs. And like rightly said, with what Ajit said about Rabada and Naughty, those guys are going to be much harder to play on this surface with their pace, the variations coming and hitting that back of a length. The ball's going to keep low sometimes and have that little bit of bounce as well. So all that Sri Lanka definitely has to look outside the box, especially in that first 6 overs, and then in that first 12, 14 overs when the ball's harder. That is the time to take that advantage, and they definitely have to do something different.
Yeah, since you mentioned that, Dasun Chanaka actually used that very word. He says there's no weakness against spin, or he doesn't think there's a weakness against spin. It's about controlling spin better, taking better options at the right time. Could you break that down for me, Mahela? How do you control spin better?
Well, I think depending on the strength of the batsman, who can take on spin, they're the guys who have to take on spin, and then the other guys try and rotate out. The biggest thing playing spin is about rotating strike, where you be able to get that single and make sure that you're sticking the scoreboard, and then you can take that calculated risk getting that boundary off, especially in those middle overs where people are trying to, like, get dot balls and then build the pressure, and then the next big option is that to go for that big expensive shot and then lose a wicket. That means a new batsman comes in. So taking those right decisions and who's playing which spinner properly is going to be the key. I think good teams have controlled good spinners in that manner, good partnerships, different batsmen take the option, whether it's a short boundary, long boundary. So all those have to be factored in when you're managing spin and trying to attack, and at the same time make proper decisions out there in the middle.
All right, fair enough. Now, as we just discussed South Africa's batting, it's going to be in action a little later in the day. But fair to say, Ajit, teams figuring out what a good score batting first has perhaps been the biggest challenge. It's a tournament for chasing so far. Sri Lanka therefore find themselves perhaps against the rubber fit, against the runner fit with having to bat first. But from what you've seen of South Africa, is this a team that's still looking for their ideal sort of batting form, in which case a subpar score could be good, a 150 could be competitive today?
I mean, we haven't seen the pitch, but considering it's on the same one that was played yesterday, 150 will be, I think, Sri Lanka. I mean, it's before the ball is bowled, you don't want to say it, but 150 looks like a very good score, especially Sri Lanka's bowling. The game's in the afternoon as well, so dew is not going to play a part. And if that is not going to happen, then South Africa will have to bat really well. They've got some quality in their batting. South Africa, some guys who are in good form, likes of Markram, Van der Dusen, De Kock's obviously back. Those. So they've got enough in their batting. But when you're chasing against some sort of mystery, there's good spin bowling as well. The Sri Lankan quicks bowled better at Sharjah than they bowled in Dubai, where perhaps the bounce was a little bit truer. So Sri Lanka 150, I think they'd be happy with. How they get there is another matter, because I don't think getting there will be that easy. Much easier said than done. But I think afternoon game against South Africa, certainly there is a little bit of advantage. Even though Sri Lanka is going to defend the total, they certainly have a little bit of advantage if they get to that total.
Right, Myla, got a score in mind or hard to say before a ball is bowled?
I think Ajit is spot on. I think 150 would be a very good score. But Sri Lanka look to like start to lead from the beginning itself. I think 140. I mean, if what you've seen in Sharjah is that 5-10 runs extra is going to be massive, like we saw against West Indies Bangladesh game as well. So I think if Sri Lanka back to get that 140, there's a template that suits these Sharjah wickets. Keep wicket. I mean, go hard in first 10, 12 overs, and back till the 15th, 16th, and see whether you can get a couple of big overs at the back end. Once the ball gets softer, it's not that easy. So then you probably can push that extra 10 runs and get to that 150. But anything over 140, I think it's going to be a competitive score.
All right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. This looks like the kind of game that we will be discussing, and going on until the 37th, 38th, 39th, 40th over, and it should be a close one. Before we leave you, though, it's time to just have a quick look at some of these stunning venue cities of the ICC Men's T20 World Cup 2021. So have a look at this, and these pictures are powered by Dell. Now I don't know how much of that you get to see inside a bubble, but once you do get out of the bubble, it's fun, isn't it, Mahela?
Yeah, no, definitely. I managed to have a couple of days out of the bubble and managed to roam around a little bit after so many days. But I think UAE is a beautiful place. I mean, I think it has changed a lot since the time that we started playing in Sharjah way back in late 90s. I'm sure Ajit did that as well. Where we used to based out of Sharjah, and then we used to go for our off days to Dubai, and spend the day out. But I think it's completely changed over the last 20 odd years, and it's a bustling place, and especially with the expo around. There's a lot of color to it as well, and with the World Cup and all that, there's a lot of buzz around UAE at the moment.
Still fun, Ajit, every time you get to play a bit of golf in the UAE, or maybe so much more to do.
I don't know. I've been in a bubble, so there's no golf allowed in the bubble. I've I've only just got home, and that's where I play golf. So yeah, I mean, it must be fun for you to just be at home, Ronak.
Yeah. Really? Okay. How you put this on me? Anyway, let's leave it there. It is stunning, the UAE, when you can just consume it in all its glory, when you don't have to worry about bubbles. But let's not worry about that now. Thank you very much. Mahela, Jayawardene, Ajit, Agarkar pick up the chat in 20 overs time. As we expect from South Africa, Aiden Markram has ball in hand. It's his sort of tournament at the moment. He's making things happen. Let's see if we can make things happen with the ball, and let's see if Sri Lanka can bounce back after their defeat against Australia and put something competitive batting first at Sharjah. Join us at halftime on Maruti Suzuki presents ESPN Cricket for T20 Timeout, powered by Dell.
Maruti Suzuki's People Technology presents Suzuki Connect with Navigate to Car and many other features.
Watch more, feel more, Dell.